Hey, what's up? Sean here with another episode of Locked on Raptors. And on today's show, the Toronto Raptors lost a very ugly game to the Boston Celtics at the TD Garden last night. And Katie Heindl joins me to talk about it. We'll dig into our big takeaways. We'll dig into the dude of the game. It's going to be hard, I think. Slim pickings and dude of the game contenders, but we got to stick with tradition. It's the segment everyone's calling for. We'll get to all that and so much more on today's episode of Locked on Raptors, so stick around.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1055 of Locked On Raptors for Thursday, November the 11th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors. We can find links to every single episode of the podcast. And, of course, you can find the podcast on all your favorite podcast providers, whether they be the podcast apps or on YouTube for the low, low price of On the House. Absolutely free. So please go subscribe, follow, tell a friend, rate, review, all that good stuff. It's much appreciated. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Should also know that today's show is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. All right, on today's show, the Toronto Raptors lost in Boston last night, 104-88, in a game where the offense never got going. Joining me to talk about this game and to help me through this, as you can hear, I have the frayed voice of a man who was watching a punk rock show along all sorts of similarly shaped and dressed dudes. There were a lot of jean jackets at the Titus Andronicus show last night, so I only caught the Raptors in 30 and have been sort of perusing some highlights and box scores. But Katie Heindl watched this game in full, and you did the Lord's work here, Katie, because boy, oh boy, this did not end well for the Toronto Raptors. How are you?
I'm good. You don't actually sound that bad, I have to say.
Oh, I feel like in my head, like the vibrations of my vocal cords are like rattling in the back of my brain. It's not good over here.
I thought you were going to be like when you told me what you were doing last night. I thought you would be a little bit more shredded today. Maybe feel physically shredded.
Yeah, you know what it is you're wearing a mask when you're at concerts now, and I think like the condensation inside the mask maybe keeps your vocal cords a little fresher. I don't know.
Moistens them up.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah,
but
disgusting vocal cord science. Definitely, we should bring a scientist on to confirm this very accurate theory. Either way, Katie, last night's game, let's dig into it, shall we?
Sure.
The Raptors lose 104-88. Scottie Barnes looked really good. We'll talk about Scottie Barnes, and we will have a due to the game to hand out, but we should probably just dig into sort of your biggest takeaway from watching this one, as the Raptors offense really, really struggled to get anything going against the Celtics.
Yeah, I think what struck me was just like you knew the Celtics were going to come out like this after getting blown out in their home opener and basically humiliated. I think they had an all-players meeting after 2 more games, like they had a pretty bad start to their season. So they did their homework, I think like the Celtics made adjustments. I think they even took a page out of Toronto's playbook and they really capitalized on offensive rebounds. That was like just something that they were pushing all game. And, the Raptors were down 2 games coming into this. They had like some time off. So I was a little bit surprised that they didn't adjust, even that they didn't really make adjustments in this one as they went. Last night, that's what kind of struck me. Like they looked pretty sticky. They looked a little bit tired. They didn't really look as, things have been, I wouldn't say they've looked at the sharp all season. Sharp is not a way I would describe Toronto, but they can usually eke out a rhythm and sort of figure things out on the fly. And they didn't really have that. I think they were pretty much chasing all game.
Yeah, that's been, I think, like the tale of a lot of these sort of recent Raptors teams without Kawhi Leonard, right? Like in the post-Kawhi era, is everything feels a little bit labored, but eventually they kind of have it all locked into place and they'll have runs where things kind of all come together. And it kind of is a feedback loop, right? Like the defense feeds their offense. That makes their offense easier to come by. Like it's a team that very much has like a snowball effect to it. And sometimes you're going to have a game where the snowball never gets rolling and it's stuck at the top of the hill because it's too wet or something like that. Back to talking about things that are wet. We're going to stop that. But yeah, so I'm wondering, I think this game, you should expect games like this for this team, right? Like, we knew that this was going to be a struggle offensively. I wrote after the first game of the season against the Wizards, where they scored 83 points and really outside of like a 4-minute stretch looked as bad as you could possibly look on offense. Their defense, much like it did last night, kind of kept them in it either way. But I wrote that, like, you're going to see this. This is going to be what the worst of the Raptors looks like, and it's going to happen. It's a shame it took place against the Celtics because you never want good things for the Celtics. And boy, watching back some of the highlights this morning from the NBC Boston feed, I can't do it, man. They call him Pascal Siakam. They call him OG Anubini. Like, they're terrible. But either way, that's besides the point. I just think, you have to expect that there are going to be games like this, and you would hope that as the season goes along, they'll be further and fewer between.
Mm-hmm.
I do kind of want to ask you though, Katie, sort of that snowball effect type conversation. I've made the point over the years that I think Nick Nurse's teams, if he's ever given just like the same set of players for more than 5 games in a row, they usually will go on a run. It hasn't happened often because they've been so sort of, up and down with injuries ever since the title defense season, frankly. And so we've never really gotten to see it kind of hit full force. But I guess this kind of goes to the sort of integration of Pascal Siakam. And do you think that it's going to sort of eventually click into place here, or are there? It's just 2 games, and obviously, some good things have happened. That first half against the Nets was amazing. But are you concerned at all about the fit of this new starting 5 the Raptors are rolling out there, or is it a thing where you're looking at, oh, maybe one guy should maybe shift to the bench? Should they change up the rotation patterns just to kind of give guys more space to do their thing? Or do you think that starting 5, which should be said, looks demonic on defense, do you think it's just going to take some time here to kind of figure things out and click into place?
It's just going to take time. And I think, patience with Siakam. I mean, Fred VanVleet talked about that in his post game too, right? Pascal's coming back into a lineup where like the spacing is way different. The rhythm is going to be way different because of that. And like, he is a player we know who takes a little bit to get into the swing of things as is, even when things are extremely familiar to him, and they're not right now. That said, I do actually wonder if it wouldn't benefit Siakam more, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of push and pull on this end, but I think Siakam has to almost adapt himself more to everything that's been ongoing, rather than, I wonder if there's this expectation for him that the team should adapt to him, right? The nice thing would be kind of in the middle, but you've got this team and these kind of, I don't know, loose rotational, like the loose lineups as they are now, sort of well underway already. And so I think it would be a much faster fit if Siakam could meet them where they are, because we've already seen some really phenomenal things from like the groups that Nurse is putting out there. And you can see where they would all benefit from Pascal's shooting once that comes back. Because again, I do really think that is just a rhythm thing. I like Fred made some really great points about that in his post game, and just like, especially in a game like last night, it's extremely hard to chip away at a lead when you're kind of disrupting any sense of your own rhythm. With like, for them, that was like turnovers. They had 5 turnovers in the fourth quarter. And I think like any time it seemed like they had their legs under them, they almost kicked them out from under themselves, which was very frustrating to watch. Right. But like, you can't catch up that way. And again, for a player like Pascal who needs that rhythm, there was really no, it wasn't really doing him any favors. And he's still on a minute restriction, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's it too. Like, you can't play all game and hope to catch a rhythm later as the game goes on, when you have a very set amount of time that you can be in it, right? So I'm sure there's like a lot more at play. Again, it's only been 2 games. I think there's going to be some adjustments. Fred said, he's even saying to Pascal, like, you just got to be patient.
Yeah, I mean, I think patience is certainly the thing to be employed here for everybody involved, the players on the court, the people watching it, Nick Nurse. Like, it's going to take some time to reintegrate Siakam. And like, I empathize with Siakam here too, because like there's all this talk in the offseason. All right, now I'm the guy, I'm going to take over. And then all of a sudden there's this 20-year-old who's scoring 21 every night and is like the center of the universe. And look, I think Siakam is still the better player. And I think eventually he'll kind of rise to the top of the pecking order. But it's got to be kind of weird, kind of thinking, all right, well, we got this big three. All of a sudden, now we got four dudes who you kind of are building around. And it's an adjustment. It's not a bad thing necessarily. It's actually one of them good problems that you have too many 6'9" wings who are good and awesome. But it's going to take a little bit for everyone to kind of figure out and learn to play off of one another. The nice thing is that they all kind of have a very, high basketball sort of, set of instincts and, play well off of one another. And I think their skills complement each other pretty well. So I think it will come around. But I think the minutes restriction point is really good too, in that, if you're a rhythm team, like we've talked about, if you're the snowball effect team, if you're starting the snowball all over again every 6 minutes because Pascal Siakam has been taken out, you're never going to have that big, beautiful snowball that you're rolling down onto the road onto oncoming traffic.
You're sticking with this analogy, I can tell.
I am. I really, I think I've landed on something here. I also should say that the times where the small ball lineup looks good, it looks incredibly good. Like even just like the first, bucket the Raptors scored in the game, which was the lob to Scottie Barnes in the pick and roll. I mean, that's why you have Scottie Barnes as like your nominal center. He is a vertical threat. He can finish around the basket. He also is just like a genius cutter and knows where to stand. Even if he's not spacing, quote unquote, he's still like making the defense think, because he's kind of in those soft pockets in the dunker spot or whatever it might be. Siakam hit him with a really nice pass, sort of big to big at one point. I think it's going to work out just fine, and I'm not worried there. And I think, just as they get more bodies back too, it'll kind of stabilize the entire operation. Kem Birch not being there is obviously huge. He's been massive so far. And Yuta Watanabe could be back as soon as the end of this week, perhaps early next week. And I think he's going to inject a little bit of sort of, IQ, playmaking instincts, that type of stuff as well, which is nice. We're going to continue on here, Katie. We're going to dig into Scottie Barnes, because how can you not talk about Scottie Barnes when he puts up 21, 7, and 4 on 7 of 11 shooting? We'll get to that in 1 second here. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at BetOnline.ag, who are back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season is here with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus upon your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON, all one word, LOCKEDON. And you will receive that bonus, meaning if you put in $100, you get $150 in your account magically to play with. That is an awesome deal. From basketball, football, baseball, futures, odds for next season, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait and take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Katie, let's continue on here. I just wanted to note one little small sample size theater thing about the starting lineup. 27 minutes, a 98.1 offensive rating, a 107.5 defensive rating, minus 9.4 overall. Very small sample stuff. Playing two good teams. The Celtics seem to have kind of gotten their stuff together. I'm not too worried about it just yet. Just wanted to note that as an addendum to the conversation in the last segment. Katie, Scottie Barnes in this game had 21 points, 7 boards, 4 assists. As I was keeping tabs on this game on my phone, I kept just gravitating to Scottie Barnes' numbers and like, oh, well, it can't be that bad. Look at what Scottie's doing. What was your experience watching the full breadth of that game last night from Scottie Barnes? And I guess my sort of overarching question here is, does the loss or any loss matter if Scottie Barnes is looking like this?
I have to say it wasn't as soothing to me as it was to you. Like, it didn't take the sting off as much,
Right.
watching in real time. But that said, like, that's something I've found since the season started is like, it's just a pleasure and a joy to watch Scottie Barnes do anything, like anything at all. And like also just in terms of his decision making in real time, how like far advanced that is. Like when the Raptors drafted Scottie Barnes, I think the rhetoric around it was like, he's a bit of a raw player, right? Like he's a raw guy, but we see the upside, and it's huge. but he's not been playing that raw at all,
No.
right? Like he has really taken, I know we've talked about this before, but he's really taken even the lessons starting with summer league and then going into training camp and now just like a few games in. And I'm the last person who's like, let's pile on all of our expectations, on a teenager, basically, because I'm really trying to hold myself back from that. But when you see the way that he's playing now and like the coolness overall, again, like his decision making is what's floored me, because even in like a pinch or just like a scramble, which the Raptors have had a lot of this season, he's letting the game come to him, which is a very rare thing, even for experienced players, but certainly for rookie players. So no, it didn't take the sting off last night's game, but it has been a real like joyful thread through this early season.
Yeah, I mean, he had a play last night. Even his misses have like really nice and fun and wonderful qualities to them. There was one, he was just kind of bringing it up the floor, kind of like semi-transition. He puts himself in the paint, pulls up, stops, takes a look around, realizes there's not an option. He's like, all right, I'll just put up a floater. He missed it, but like it's just like really quick processing, but done slowly, if that makes sense. Like he just does not ever seem rushed. And yeah, the rawness and all of that. I wonder if just like the conversation about the rawness for players is like too much tied to like shooting form, because very obviously he's got polish just in terms of like being a basketball player and knowing where to be and, throwing, deft passes and all that stuff. Like that stuff, you don't just like learn that stuff between the end of your college season and the start of the NBA. A lot of that's just innate. And that feels like it was really underrated in the draft process. And, I wonder if maybe, people start looking and, oh, this guy just like knows how to play basketball. Yeah, we should maybe draft this guy, and think that if we think the shooting is the one thing that will unlock him, then yeah, maybe he's raw from a shooting perspective, but overall, like he's not raw in any way. So that's been a delight to watch. I also think, going back to the point of like the starting lineup, like you mentioned, his playmaking, his decision making, it's going to play so well as that operator in the middle of the floor with space around him, assuming Pascal can kind of get back to shooting. But even if Pascal doesn't get back to shooting, like there's enough that he can do like off the catch that, I think can kind of work as spacing anyway. And, when you have OG, Trent, and Fred around him, eventually those guys are going to hit their shots. We talked earlier this week with Vivek about the three-point shooting and how it's been really bad this season. And, is it to do with the way the Raptors are playing? Is it small sample theater? Is it just kind of, make or miss league dugs type stuff? But, I think at some point here, that lineup in particular is going to click in. And there are enough guys who have proven that they're good enough shooters on this team that you're going to be able to unlock another level of Scottie just because he's surrounded by those guys that he can kind of connect with. So, yeah, I'm finding myself really, really at ease with everything this season. Every loss, I'm just like, yeah, they lost, but Scottie Barnes threw down an awesome reverse dunk and ripped it out of Kevin Durant's hands like a baby. Yeah, they lost, but Scottie put up 21, 7, and 4. Yeah, they lost, but Scottie. Like I'm having a hard time. Like, excuse me, there's the voice. I'm having a hard time getting like in the feelings when they lose games, because they're already ahead of schedule, because Scottie Barnes is ahead of schedule in a way that I don't think anybody expected. Are you kind of feeling that same sensation? I know like last night's loss didn't really get the sting taken away, mostly probably I would assume because the Celtics, but like, are you kind of feeling like that same sort of general feeling of ease this entire season, just kind of knowing that a lot of it's gravy because Scottie Barnes is already this good?
It's not just Barnes, but I think the thing that I am telling myself is that our expectations of the team, like realistically, our expectations should have been, it would have been nice to get some wins in, right? But like the team's already a lot better, I think, than even we were allowing ourselves to think, because there was a lot of greenness. There was a lot of new guys coming into the rotation. They were back in the city for the first time. There was all of this other stuff. They were also coming off like the worst season. Like, this is what I think of. I think of like Fred and Pascal and OG Boucher. Like, these are guys that have been on consistently winning teams for their entire NBA careers, right? Like teams that would make the playoffs maybe like how far you went in the playoffs would vary, but you would be consistently winning, and it was all, under Kyle Lowry. And so I think there's going to be a big adjustment to go from last season in Tampa to this season. And also now, like, I was thinking about this too, like Fred and Pascal, like those are the guys that have to, when slumps like this happen, or when you've got rough games where like the rhythm is just like a nightmare, and the shooting isn't there, and you have to like figure out how to make opportunities for yourself. Now it's up to Fred and Pascal to do that. So I imagine there's an adjustment there that I don't think we're giving enough credit for, that might take some time. But all of that said, they're still performing much better collectively as a team and gelling as a team. Like Gary was talking about this after practice the other day before they went on the road, was just like, we're a really good team. He's like, I don't know that people really give us credit for that, but like, we're a really good team. Like, and he's like, what I mean by that is like, we try really hard.
Yeah.
So I think all of this stuff is going to kind of smooth itself out as the season goes on. There's an off games like last night, inevitably, but already Raptors are just in a better position, I think, than we could have really hoped for. Because we were maybe hoping for what, like, it could be like a really rough and ugly season. But now it's like, well, we got a couple of rough and ugly games. But overall, I think like, the upside is there, and it's overcoming kind of the downside of everything.
Yeah, and there's a very real chance that they go into Philly tonight in the second night of a back-to-back, even with Pascal not available, and take that G League looking roster that doesn't have anyone available to the woodshed, and it's 7-6, and you're kind of happy. I think you should be happy with where they're at either way. Like again, like ahead of schedule by quite a bit, I would say. And obviously Scottie's a big part of that, but the growth of OG and Fred and all of that stuff is all tied into that as well. Katie, we're going to finish off the podcast in just a sec with the dude of the game as selected by you. We'll get to that in 1 second here. But first, got to tell you about our pals over at McDonald's. They have been proudly serving community since 1965. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by them. It has always been a place to get more than just tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends and family can come to reconnect, a place where classmates can meet up for a study group, knowing they'll have dependable Wi-Fi and an endless supply of French fries and McFlurries. Win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, and the home team or the away team can go to recharge. I loved stopping at McDonald's after a soccer game in my youth or something like that. It was wonderful. It's the place you can always look forward to stopping on a long road trip as well, to rest your legs and refuel. I love going to McDonald's myself. I partake quite often, and it's just I can't really. Everyone knows you just go to McDonald's because something has happened, and there's usually some sort of gathering. You're going with friends after a night out, whatever it might be. You can even watch sports at McDonald's. They have TVs there, and they have sports on. I've watched World Cup soccer games there before. So head to your local McDonald's to refuel and reconnect. Did somebody say Locked On Raptors watch party at McDonald's? Who's to say? Might happen in the future. Either way, thank you so much to McDonald's for sponsoring the podcast. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. All right, Katie. Sorry to make you listen to me sing.
Nice jingle.
Thank you so much. I'm really working on the pipes over here. It's the mask again. It's warming up the pipes. But Katie, we have reached the part of the show that everyone clamors for at this point. It is the due to the game, the segment that is taking over the globe. Delano Banton, currently your due to the game leaderboard champion with 2 due to the game nods. I put it to you for the very first time, Katie. Who is your dude of the game from a game that did not have that many contenders to win dude of the game?
Yeah, this is a tough one. But I want to go back to what I said earlier about Fred, because again, Fred's the dude of the game.
Hell yeah.
I'll make it official. But I think to me, it is going back to this idea that the amount that he has on his shoulders this season, that I think he's going to learn in real time throughout every game, but also like that he never, damn, look at that. That he never really like bulks under that way. Like you don't see the pressure of it on him, if that makes sense. And I think that's a testament a little bit to Kyle Lowry, but it's more of a testament to Fred VanVleet and the way that I think he stepped into the role of team leader this season. For like with Pascal out to start too, so he doesn't even really get to share that on the floor, or he didn't to start. And I think when he talks about things like rhythm and communication and like creating opportunities, and just like he sees the game a little bit, like we talked a little bit earlier about like how Scottie lets the game come to him, and I think Fred has this really wonderful bird's eye view of the game. So like last night, like he's a competitor, like he's like, it sucks, like we're not happy with that. I'm never happy with a loss, but he's able to kind of fold it into the stride of the season now, and kind of look to what's next. And I have no doubt that he'll make adjustments going into Philly tonight and impart those on the team. Because I think right now, like the communication is there, but it needs to be honed. But I really trust Fred VanVleet to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he's just like the greatest quote in the NBA, shortlist at the very least. And like you feel like he, as much as he like makes fun of the media and stuff, like I don't like to talk to non-basketball people. Like he very much like is trying to offer the most thoughtful answer he can provide in any given context. And I think that if he's talking like that to the media, I can only imagine what his conversations are like with the very young team he's kind of shepherding along here after a loss like that. And I think it's really good to have somebody with that sort of big picture mindset in the room. And yeah, every game that you lose is going to sting because you're professionals and you're competitors and all of that. But I think to have sort of a guy who after a loss like that can kind of walk in and reset things and say, hey, yeah, that sucked, but like there's lots to be happy about here. Basically employing the "it's fine" philosophy, really going after my heart.
I would say no.
It's fine. The agenda, we'll stop there. Either way, yeah, I think it's just a really nice thing to know that is the steadying presence within the locker room, and that there's not any sort of leadership void by any means after who left over the offseason. He also hit 4 of the 6 threes the Raptors hit in this game.
I was gonna say, if we want to talk about shooting, like if we want to talk about shooting and shot creation, it does remind me. I know, but we're gonna have to stop making comparisons to Kyle Lowry. But when those games where you'd be like, God, it's such a quiet game, and then you'd go back and look at the box score, you'd be like, oh no, he didn't. But he also like carried the game through, right, and was like generative of the energy that the team needed.
So Fred VanVleet gets his first due to the game win. This has gone mostly to like the role players and bench dudes on the team. It's nice to see the starters get a due to the game nod as well. And he joins Gary Trent Jr., Delano Banton, and Malachi Flynn as the only members of the team who have one dude of the game.
I will say you did jog my memory. There was a moment when Malachi climbed. He tried to like piggyback. Was it on Robert Williams? So like good runner up for due to the game, right under the basket. Like that is one way to disrupt the shot.
I mean, he got the due to the game nom exclusively from that Cavs game for that under the basket, sorcery he pulled, ripping it from your boy Jarrett Allen's hands. That was enough to win it for him that time as well. As much as I know that pained you because of your Jarrett Allen affiliations. By the way, go read Katie's piece. Game. Yeah, he did. Yeah, that 3 made up for all of it. But yeah, go read Katie's wonderful piece on Jarrett Allen that came out yesterday. Go do it. Katie, that I think does it for today's episode, and really appreciate you being here as always when you stop by. It's the greatest thing in the world. You're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to talk about the game against the Sixers, which is going to be grand, I'm sure. A whole lot of Tyrese Maxey we're going to be watching tonight. 38 shots from Tyrese Maxey. I'm here for it. Katie, thank you for being here. Anything that you would like to promote for the good people out there?
You already did it for me. Thanks, man. You can read that Jarrett Allen feature on Dime. It's kind of it's the header on the main page right now, so you can't miss it.
Excellent. And everyone go subscribe to Basketball Feelings as well. It's the greatest thing in the world. And your podcast over there is awesome too. So go and check it out. And you can find me, of course, at Woodley Sean on Twitter. You can subscribe to, rate, review, follow, all that good stuff. Your favorite podcast apps and YouTube. You can find the podcast. It's always appreciated when you support it there. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Now go make Locked On Fantasy Basketball your second listen of the day, as Josh Lloyd is covering all you need to know about fantasy basketball as the season progresses. So go check him out over there on YouTube as well. And we will talk to you again tomorrow with Katie Heindl talking about the Sixers game to round out the week. Bye-bye.